Hello, everybody. Welcome to Quantum Witch Cafe, your safe place to talk about anything strange, paranormal, fringe, UFOs, UAP if you're really fancy. Tonight, I have Constance Victoria Briggs, and she is an author of many amazing books. But before we get to her, I want to say thank you to anybody listening now or later in another place, on another planet, wherever you are. Thank you. If you're listening to audio only on Anomalous Podcast Network, thank you as well. And wherever you're listening or watching, please leave feedback however you can and follow, subscribe, like, all that stuff. I really appreciate it. So today we have Constance Victoria Briggs, and as I said, she is an author of many, many books. She writes these beautiful encyclopedias that cover all the unknown. This in particular one that I read recently or a while ago was the Encyclopedia of Moon Mysteries, secrets, conspiracy theories, anomalies, extraterrestrials, and more. So it's a little bit of everything. So Constance, I like to have the guests introduce themselves and tell us about who you are, because I like the way it sounds coming out of your mouth. So, so tell us about yourself.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Priscilla, for having me on. I'm a little multifaceted when it comes to writing. I am a metaphysical researcher and writer. I started out working on books about angels and spirituality, and I looked into even religion. Wrote a book about God. Who is God? What is God? And so I'm a metaphysical writer, but I am also what I consider myself to be a cosmic, anomalous author who disseminates information in that area that I think that the public should know about. That's how I sum myself up.
That's very cool. Can you turn, I think you sound fine on my end, but somebody in the audience is saying that the volume is a little loud on your
It's a little loud.
Turn it down a little bit. I think it's fine. I also have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old running around, so loud to me is like just...
That's okay. So what do you think now, audience? Is it better?
Laura, just let us know if that sounds a little bit better.
Can you hear me a little better? Is it still really loud? Hello?
Right, we'll carry on. She's in there. She'll let us know.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I was like, you sound fine. But again, my gauge of loudness after having kids is just, it's messed up. So Constance, I loved this book. I don't know. I got a message from you. I don't know if you sent out a mass messaging, but I felt like I knew you already when you were inside when I opened it. And I was like, oh my goodness, like she's writing another book. And then I knew why. She says it's better.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to figure out sound. But yeah, so I jumped on it because I was like, ooh, that looks like a cool book. So what was your inspiration for the Encyclopedia of Moon Mysteries? What made you want to write this book about the moon and its mysteries?
So, this whole journey about the moon and me is something very, it's strange to me because I didn't grow up with an interest in the moon. I didn't grow up with an interest in space travel even. But I was working on my metaphysical stuff, and a lot of things, a lot of mysterious kind of information comes past your desk. When you have your hands in strange or unusual topics. So anyway, one day, I don't remember how exactly this came about, but I got a hold of a little book called Our Mysterious Spaceship Moon. And it was written by a ufologist by the name of Don Wilson, who I have looked for and can't find. But this little book was packed full of tidbits about the moon. He focused on the astronauts and what they had seen when they were up there, and I was just so surprised. I had looked at the moon in a more metaphysical aspect, as a thing that we use in magical workings, a thing that people use in poetry. It's something that I knew men went to, but I had no idea that I didn't find much up there. That was what I was taught. Don Wilson opened my eyes to there being something more. And the more I delved into the moon after that, I started to look more into it and collect stories and information. The more I knew it was very serious.
Yes,
You
there's a
know,
lot of that, right?
it's very serious stuff, actually. Um, there may be people in your audience who are familiar with some of this information, and there may be some new to it. You told me you haven't done a show on the moon, but if most people were like me, they thought that the moon was a dead rock, is a dead rock in the sky, basically. That there's nothing to it, that nothing can live up there. There's no movement. Nothing is happening. It's just sitting there, shining brightly, and helping Earth in nature. But that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. The moon is not what we thought. The moon is more than we've been taught. There's a lot going on up there.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I've been reluctant to research it a lot because as a witch, like the moon is something so special to me. Even my little boys, like kids go outside and they're just enamored by it right away. Like they're so excited when they see the moon. So I think that part of me is trying to stay ignorant to the fact that there's more going on, but the more I read, and that's the wrong answer, guys, by the way. You should never try to, do not look into something because you're not going to like it. And I am little by little. I have to do it in baby steps, which is why I liked your book because it was not like this whole thick thing of moon. People say conspiracies, and I don't mean it in a bad way when I say conspiracy. There's all these, big books out there about it. What made you decide to go with the encyclopedia format versus writing like one of those big old books that some people like to write and just, because you have a few encyclopedias out, right? So what is your attraction to the encyclopedia style books?
Honestly, I thought initially when I wanted to be a writer, I thought I wanted to write narratives and I wanted to write novels. I just found that that format was a little easier for people who were too busy in life to stop and read 1,000 books for information. I just thought, okay, you know what? I will sum up things for people. I will write short articles. For example, in my Unseen World book, the Encyclopedia of the Unseen World, that one people really enjoyed that format because, like in the Moon Mysteries, they could go in and look up angels and they get an article about angels. They could go in and look up near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, or the light, what it's like to go into the light. In the Moon Mysteries book, the same format applied because if they wanted to look up astronauts, what did astronauts see on the moon? What were their experiences? They could just go to that article. If they wanted to look up what the moon is made up of, they could go and just look up, I don't know, moon dust, and it would tell you the makeup and how the astronauts experienced it. Or if they wanted to look up transient lunar phenomena, which I would like to get into, they
Oh,
could
yes,
look up
please.
that.
You read my mind because that was going to be my
Yeah,
next question.
that's strange lights on the moon. So they could go and they could look at these short articles, and then once they were done, they could go and do their own research. Okay, once they found a subject that they really connected with, or they could just flip around in the book and you can look up, I don't know, structures on the moon, for example. There's rumors of structures on the moon. So anyway, I just thought it was an easy format for people who didn't have a lot of time and who were new to the subject.
Yeah, and that's great and for me, it was not overwhelming. I read a lot of books, but again, like because of my bias with the moon, I was kind of afraid to open it. You know what I mean? But I feel like it was easy enough for me, like you said, just to go through
We'll
and
talk about your bias a little
yes,
bit.
yes, because
I
I'm
don't,
just so, in
don't
love
be
with it.
discouraged.
Everything's like timed with it. Like, what do we do? I mean, does it, and we'll get to that. What really blew my mind is when you talk about the, now I might say this wrong, Aristarchus crater. you put that there is, since the 1700s, luminous points of light were seen on the
Right,
moon, and that
right.
leads to the transient lunar phenomena. Can you talk about that, please?
Yes, I will. And remind me that I do have topics that I want to hit before
Oh,
the night
absolutely.
finishes, because I will forget. So let's just talk about the fact that when I said the moon is not just a dead rock in the sky, there are things going on with it. One of the biggest things about the moon that we learned early on is that there are strange lights being seen on the moon, and they have been for many centuries. All right, they have been seen since by astronomers since the telescope was created. They have seen lights on the moon moving across the surface. They have seen lights in the craters of the moon, over the moon. During lunar eclipse, those astronomers wrote them off as strange lights. But now that we have better technology, people are saying, those strange lights, a lot of them are turning out to be UFOs. All right? They did not have a concept of a UFO when Galileo was, looking at the moon. So whether or not, I tell people whether or not, there's a lot of people who don't believe we went to the moon and all of this, and I don't, that's not my goal to prove that we did or didn't. But my point is whether or not we did, I believe we did. We don't need that aspect of the moon's history to show that there is something strange about the moon, and that quite possibly there actually may be someone on the moon. So what has happened is they saw these strange lights. These lights are called transient lunar phenomena and also lunar transient phenomena. You can look that up. You can Google it. And this is the subject as to what these, what this is. We don't know. Where they're coming from, who's creating them, we just don't know. But what's interesting is I'm going to show you this little book. I like to tell people about it because you can get it on Amazon. It's called the NASA Lunar Technical Report. Now, this report goes back centuries, all right? It goes back to the 1600s, where they literally, at that time, started keeping records of the strange lights seen on the craters of the moon and around. Not only did they see lights, they saw what looked like, they listed as clouds. They listed, one astronomer thought he was seeing insects moving across the moon in like a flock of something, insects, but they don't think they were birds, but all kinds of interesting things. As far as the craters go, the craters are funny because some have said that there appears to be bottomless craters, and they believe that there may be UFOs actually going into those craters with those large crevices in the bottom. They also believe that there may be, interestingly enough, spaceports, that there are ETs on the moon. Some people have said that they've seen spaceports because some of the lights seem to be lined up inside the craters and on top of the craters. And it looks like, there are things sitting there that are lit up. So that's what transient lunar phenomena is, and it goes back centuries. It isn't something that, like I said, we've just begun to experience recently. Oh, and because of this transient lunar phenomena, the early astronomers considered it scientific fact that there was someone living on the moon. It wasn't until the modern era when we looked at the moon's atmosphere and radiation and all of this, and the science said there's just no way anything could be living on the moon. They were saying that, even though NASA put this out. They never explained what all of these, sightings were, but they were just saying no one could be up there. So they've kind of created a problem for themselves. They've got people asking, well, what are all of these if there's nobody up there? So, anyway. Did you want to say something, Priscilla, or
No,
shall I
I am just
continue?
taking it all in. I'm here to learn. I'm going to write down the technical NASA,
NASA Lunar Technical Report is like
yeah,
$6, or it was on Amazon. It's very interesting to look at it, and it is in a a format, one of those easy to read formats.
right.
Yeah, just look up it gives you the date and how long they observed the phenomena.
That's
Um,
interesting, and not a lot of people talk about that.
no, it was classified information in the 60s. They declassified it. But now I'm hearing that they're a little regretful about declassifying this thing because, it shows that they knew something was going on before they ever started the lunar missions. And it kind of makes you wonder if they really went up there to explore what it was that was going on, or or the fact that they sent people up knowing there was something going on. I would have thought they would be a little more skittish about doing that, but they weren't. So anyway, uh,
Yeah,
so
interesting.
yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the origin of the moon.
Oh, sure.
If people are like me, you may have believed growing up that we knew how the moon was created. I thought they knew how the moon was created. They don't know. Scientists have come up with 5 different uh, explanations for how the moon came to be, and they have no idea. They've discounted the capture moon theory, where they said, oh, the moon was captured in Earth's gravity, blah, blah, blah. That's how I got there. Then they had to discount that. That was disproven. The most popular one was the moon, the Big Whack theory, or the Big Whack theory, and then there was a double Big Whack theory. And that was the one where the moon was smacked. They said that, no, that the Earth was smacked by a planet the size of Mars, and when it hit, that the Earth spewed out into the universe and the moon was formed. That's not true either. And if you go on NASA's website, they have not committed to anything. They said, well, they said, we kind of think that's how it happened, but they're really not sure. So they don't have a definitive reason for the moon being there. In the past, we've had people come forward, such as Isaac Asimov, who was a popular writer on science, and he basically summed this up because they don't know what it is, and he said, "What in blazes is our moon doing way out there? It's too far out to be a true satellite of Earth. It's too big to have been captured by the Earth. The chances of such a capture having been effected, and the moon then having taken up a nearly circular orbit about the Earth, are too small to make such an eventuality credible. But then, if the moon is neither a true satellite of the Earth nor a captured one, what is it? What is it?" That's where the scientists are left. And then there was a planetary scientist, William Hartman, who states in his book, Origin of the Moon, "Neither the Apollo astronauts, the lunar vehicles, nor all the king's horses and all the king's men could resemble enough data to explain the circumstances of the moon's birth." So they don't know. Oh, by the way, the Big Rock theory is also called the giant impact theory, for those of you who don't recognize.
Yeah, if you're not if you're not a space nerd, which
Right.
I assume
The
most
giant
people
impact
are
theory.
space nerds.
They don't know what it is. That is I just like to let people know that it's a thing. They're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, that's and so what are the alternative theories that you've discovered while researching what it could be, or is there anything that makes more sense than the theories we are being taught?
You know, there are not a ton of theories, but I will tell you a very popular one that has taken up a lot of has gained a reputation, and that is the spaceship moon theory, and it really is my favorite thought. I just want to say on a side note, I did write some theories in my new book as to what this might be, but all of those theories still point to it being a fake moon or a unnatural satellite. There is no natural explanation that we have come across yet as to the moon. It appears more and more like this thing was brought in here. With that said, the spaceship moon theory was a theory that was put forward after the Apollo missions, and it was brought about by two Soviet scientists who worked for the Russian government at the time. And they just couldn't hold themselves back. They put their reputations on the line by saying that, coming forward and saying that they've looked at NASA's data and it looks like this thing is real. What did they look at? Well, they considered the information out of NASA that the moon is hollow. Now, excuse me, some people think that the hollow moon is a conspiracy theory or hoax or whatever, but it was actually NASA's scientists that were stumped when they crashed the ascent stage from the astronauts' lunar module into the moon, and the moon reverberated. You heard the moon ring like a bell? Well, it didn't really sound like a bell, but it reverberated for a long time. And they did this twice. And they said there's just no way that it should be doing that unless it's hollow. And they said this at a press conference. They didn't want to. They said, we hate to say it, but, it kind of looks like the moon is hollow. So the Soviet scientists looked at that. The Soviet scientists looked at the fact that the moon dust and materials that they brought from the surface of the moon were all made up of elements that were very hard metals that shocked them, and they said that it looks like this is some sort of moon material to camouflage what they think is a metal or steel, and I don't want to say steel, but a very strong hull so that it can't be hurt. It looked like it was sent across the universe to be able to withstand radiation and meteor bombardment, that everything that they found in the material was something that they themselves think, they would have used to build a strong ship. And they also looked at the fact that the craters are all approximately 2.5 miles deep, no matter how hard the impact or how big the meteor. They're all around the same size, which shouldn't be. So they looked at a number of things, and they came to the conclusion that the moon is hollow. And so for me, let me just read you another quote from them, because not only did they say the moon is hollow, but they believed that there was someone inside of it and that there were things inside of it. And they said, it is more likely that what we have here is a very ancient spaceship, the interior of which was filled with fuel for the engines, materials and appliances for repair work, navigation instruments, observation equipment, and all manner of machinery. In other words, everything necessary to enable it to serve as a Noah's Ark of intelligence, perhaps even as a home of a whole civilization, with the idea of a prolonged, perhaps thousands of miles, millions of years existence, and long wandering through space. So they're saying that our moon, they believe, was brought in here, and that it has everything inside of it to survive, and that basically, there may be someone in it, of course, if they've got all of this, and it may even act as a kind of a Noah's Ark, which is would be the possibility in my mind that there may have been a world that was about to have some sort of catastrophe, and they built a ship and they set off, of the planet. They had entered it and they left the planet. That's what it sounds like to me. So when I want to go back a little bit in history. We have, interestingly enough, writings from ancient philosophers that were Greek, writers that were Roman from Rome, and they talked about a time where there was no moon in the sky. Which, when I first heard this, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I've always heard that the Earth needed the moon. We can't survive without the moon, right? But then, there are
Yeah.
scientists that have said, well, the Mars doesn't have this big moon and it's not tumbling around, because they said if we don't have the moon, we'd be tumbling around and
Oh,
rolling around.
wow. Yeah.
That's not happening. So they said it. I mean, it's in the writings. One of them was Aristotle, and one of them was Ovid. OVID. It's in my book, and you can Google them too, where they said there was a time when there was no moon in the sky, that Venus was the brightest object in the night sky, and they talked about a people named the Arcadians who lived before the time of the worship of the god Jupiter, they said. And they said that these people were wild, they were uncultured, they lived off the land, just as you would expect people to be before, becoming acclimated to civilization. They were wild people, and they gave them the names. They said they were called the Arcadians, and that they lived before Egypt and Mesopotamia, before the beginning of what we consider human history. But interestingly enough, there is, as we move forward from that a little bit, there is something called the Sun Gate, and it's located in Bolivia. And this is a wall with a door with symbols and writings. It's an ancient artifact, weighs tons and tons, and it sits on what appears to have been an observatory, where they were looking at the stars and the sun and everything. And they wrote this story of how the moon came in. They talked about the moon being brought into our universe and into Earth's orbit, and that it created, coming close as it did, it created chaos in the Earth, including floods and earthquakes and whatever else, catastrophes, and eventually, of course, things settled. But they do have that story, and I just can't believe, of course, that the ancients would have been writing fiction in an observatory, or playing a hoax. So, I keep telling people you can't take some of history, some of the historical writings from the philosophers and ancient texts, and say, okay, this part is true, but this isn't. The philosophers, some of them said, and these were well-respected men, said there was a time it wasn't there. You can't just say, I'm going to take this part of their writings and ignore the rest. You can't say that those people in Bolivia, who were educating people and possibly leaving records for the future, were telling untruths. So we have to take the idea of the moon coming in later seriously, and that is pretty much what these Russian scientists have said. And I want to tell you something else that's a little interesting, is there are reports that through history, humans have had extraterrestrial visitors who gave us information. Well, then there are the Zulu people of South Africa who may have had this experience, I believe, early on. After listening to the Soviet scientists, I take their ancient story way more seriously than I would have. They said that the moon they called it an egg, and they said that this egg has been hollowed out, which sounds very much like a planetoid that was hollowed out and sent across the universe and placed in Earth's vicinity, and that's how the moon came to be. Doesn't that sound a lot like what the Russian scientists said?
Yes, that's interesting. And in philosophy, we read Aristotle, right? And I have to take classes on philosophy, but never once do they bring up anything like that. And also, it's not the most known work. You would have to actually research it, right? Did you know about any of this? Was any of this a shock to you, or was this kind of what lured you into studying these moon mysteries?
So what lured me in was the part about the astronauts, and then I learned about all of this origins and the history, and I was shocked and I was mad. And since that time, I mean, I've been doing this a lot of years. Since that time, I've learned, quite a few other things outside of the moon that I thought were truths in our lives and in our cosmos. And I was shocked and disappointed.
Yeah,
But
for good reason, right?
right, right. We don't know as much as the scientists do not know as much as we thought they did. And you will not hear this stuff on the mainstream news, you know. So I recommend for anybody who wants more information, to do your research. You don't have to buy a book to do that. You can go. We all know writers don't get rich
Right.
from writing. It's a labor of love. It is a labor of love to come out and talk about this stuff. Um, so yeah.
Yes, especially, I kind of like having everything in one place because you can go and research everything. But for some people don't have the time to go make a separate Google Doc, put all their research in it, or make a Word document, put all their research, write it out in a way that they could understand. So thank you for writing that because for somebody like me that's been hearing about like the moon stuff for a while, but not really looking into it out of like kind of I think afraid. I already had so much disappointment with things that we've been lied to about. I was just like, God, even the moon, we, um, a lot of our ancestors, I guess after it was here, used it for worship to explain things. And these lies started so early on. Um, how do you think it would change the world if something like this came out and were taken seriously by most people? Like to those of us that research, we're taking it seriously. But I mean, like the mainstream world, like people that just going on about their lives, and all of a sudden they find out the moon was not a natural thing.
It would take a lot, I think, to convince people. They're going to have to go and be shown evidence, you know, um, or they won't believe it initially. I don't even know that my friends believe me. And I keep saying you need to read the book. Really, you need to read the book. How do I think it will affect people? Well, I'm going to go back into a little bit of a spiel here too. So, so NASA had the same question. Did you know that? They had the same question. How could they not, after that, all that information they compiled and secretly published among themselves, and we have it today. So when they got the idea to send men to the moon, they wanted to know what would happen if they encountered extraterrestrials. At that time, they always used the term aliens. And they didn't know how to handle it or proceed. So they contacted a government organization and they asked for advice. And the organization published a report that we know today as the Brookings Report. I actually have in my new book, the Moon's Galactic History. I actually put this in my book where they came back and told them to keep it quiet, keep it, on the down low or whatever, because society couldn't handle it. It would ruin the economy. It would not be good. It would be disaster. Basically, they told them it would be a disaster. Don't say anything. And I really feel that that's why so many things were kept quiet, because a lot of stuff happened in the 60s with the moon. It didn't have to be astronauts. They sent up the lunar orbiter, and it came back with a lot of strange pictures of structures and things. So, but they were like, yeah, no, don't tell the public. So when you hear about NASA covering things up, I believe that was they're one of their biggest reasons, because that was the advice they got. Do I think that people can handle it? I think today people, once you convince them that it's true, I think they could handle it. Now, see, on a little, side note, I believe that there are extraterrestrials. I believe that we're being visited. I believe that we live in a galactic community. We're not just alone out here on Earth. I believe there are people, in the sky, and I think they're visiting us and trying to help. Now you've got benevolent and malevolent ones. But yeah, I'm losing my thought. But I was going to say, I think that we are being prepared for the idea that we're not alone in the universe. I think that we're using, that they are using maybe even like the media to educate us. If I'm a Star Trek fan, and so I have a story in my new book where I talk about Gene Roddenberry. I don't remember now if I put Gene Roddenberry in my Moon Mysteries book. I'll have to look. Did I? Did I put that in there?
Well, let me look. I have it right here. So, and it's in alphabetical order.
Okay. I've got two phone books out, and I'm like,
about the moon. You can look it up.
What is weird? What is weird now? So yeah, I just want to say that Gene Roddenberry, if you're a Star Trek fan or not, he is a person who created Star Trek. He produced it, created it, wrote scripts for it early on, and he is known to have been sitting in meetings with a woman in the 60s who said that she was receiving information from extraterrestrials. She was channeling extraterrestrials, and he, among others, wanted to know what information she was getting, because they heard it was really interesting. So one of the things the extraterrestrials said was that they are on a ship close to Earth, and that there are a lot of different races from different worlds on the ship, and they are traveling the galaxy, and they're trying to help, and that they were here to help. In their case, they were worried about the nuclear bomb. All right, and they were worried about humanity destroying life here, and they said they couldn't let that happen. If it did, it would have a rippling effect in the galaxy. But the people believe, and I don't know if he ever said it, it is believed that Gene Roddenberry created Star Trek from these channelings, from this information he was receiving, and that was a means of beginning to prepare people for the idea that there are extraterrestrials and that we're not alone in the universe. So it is a possibility that we are being influenced in that direction in preparation for one day, maybe soon, that we'll, as the masses will learn that we're not alone. So once, maybe I think, going back to your question, from what we're seeing in the media, from what we're seeing in the movies and the shows and the books, I don't think it's going to be as much as a shock today as it would have been in the 60s. So I think we're ready. We may have some resistance. Who knows? People may go crazy, but there may be a portion that is very calm and accepting. But like with all change, we have to get through it. We can't, if all of this is true, and I think it is, and we're not alone, and we're being visited, and there are tons of sightings of UFOs every day around the world, we can't just sit back anymore and say, okay, it's just us. It doesn't make any sense. We're living in a false reality, So when it comes to the moon, I think that they're ready. They could, be once. Yeah, I think they could be ready now.
Right. So you even wrote a second book, right, about the moon, and it's the Galactic History.
Yeah.
No? Okay.
Yeah. You guys want to see it?
Yeah, sure. You were telling me when I asked you for this one that you were having another one come out, and I meant to order it, and it just slipped my mind. So I'll definitely have to order that one. Barry has a really interesting question. He wants to know if you heard about Ingo Swann's remote viewing of the moon.
Yes, yes, I have, and I love Ingo Swan's story, um, because his story tells us that there's someone up there. I mean, there's lots of different opinions on who is up there, but Ingo. So let me just tell you what happened with him. He was a very prominent remote viewer 30 years ago, and he was at the top. Ingo Swann was the first person to tell us that Jupiter has a ring around it. He remote viewed Jupiter and learned that it has a ring around it before our scientists ever discovered it. So I think that, he had some credibility. He was recruited by a secret agency who wanted him to remote view the moon. So they took him to a secret location, and they had him do so. They gave him what Ingo Swann called coordinates. I'm not a remote viewer, at least not by choice. I've had some interesting experiences. I don't know if it was remote viewing or not. But anyway, so he remote viewed, and when he did, long story short, what he saw were humanoid beings on the moon. He said they were not wearing any clothing. He said they looked like they were creating something. I think it was a laser of some sort. He saw buildings. I believe he saw factories. There was a lot going on. What was interesting about this is that whomever is there were able to pick up his remote viewing, his presence, so to speak. And he withdrew, and he came back, and he hid. He was frightened, which says tells us that whoever that is may have telepathy and be able to pick up things. So that's what he saw. And if he was right about Jupiter, then why not be right about what he said he was seeing on the moon?
Yeah, that's a big. Yeah, I'm familiar with him and his work, and it's just so many things that he said were validated later. So it's kind of one more thing to question about the moon, right? What they've been telling us. Is there anything that was just like extremely shocking to you? Like, was there something that stood out when you were researching this book and your next book and your other book that you were just like blown away by?
Yeah, the whole idea that there is not only aliens, maybe aliens on the moon, but there may be an entire civilization on the moon. I mean, we don't know if we can get past the point of speculating if someone is up there, because I believe there are, then we need to figure out who it is, and that's what my next book is about, and it is a narrative, not an encyclopedia. But that was my most shocking thing, and the most thing that I'm a little obsessed about, because if there is aliens or extraterrestrials on the moon, they could be an entire civilization that may be living inside the moon and maybe using the surface of the moon. We've heard the hollow moon story and what could be inside of it, but they also found structures on the moon. Now, these structures are twofold. Originally, the lunar orbiter went up and it found structures that looked like they had been blown apart. They were partial structures, walls and bridges and columns, up there, that some of them went together. Then other pieces looked like they were, there are some items that look like the Washington Monument, shaped like that, several of them together. So if there's structures, there had to be somebody who built the structures. And are they there now? Are they gone? I obviously, I believe they're there because today we're seeing ships moving around. I've seen footage, and you can actually Google this too. There are a lot of astronomers now who are filming things that look like UFOs coming in and out of the moon, and there are others who are claiming that they're seeing what looks like ships lined up around the craters, which is what some of the astronauts talked about. So there's someone up there, and it may be a civilization, and it may not just be an extraterrestrial civilization. One, it may be several, And there are some rumors that we have humans up there that were secretly sent up there too. But I think that's what fascinates me the most, that there may be an extraterrestrial civilization on the moon, which means that we didn't get any further than the moon before we ran into someone. And if there are beings on the moon, then where else in the universe, in the galaxy or even the solar system, that there are extraterrestrials? And how much did the scientists know and they didn't tell us?
Yeah, that's definitely something to think about because I keep going back to our relationship as like our ancestors till now, unless you've done your research like you have, or picked up a book like yours, or looked into it. Like we have this relationship with the moon, and you don't even have to be a witch to feel that way. Like I said, my sons are out there and they see the moon and they get excited. Why do you think people are so attached to it, and don't want to believe this if they do read it or hear about it?
I think, I think that we're so set, on there's so many different beliefs on earth, and we're so set on them, and we're so comfortable with them, and we're so happy about them. Change is hard for people. That's why they don't want to embrace it. That's just too hard a thing for them. If we have been taught from the time we were young that the moon wasn't always there, or it may be, not natural, then we wouldn't have this problem. If we have been taught that we don't know how the moon was created, we don't know how the solar system was created, it's all theory. We don't even know how humans came to be. It's theory, and of course there's the religious idea, and people get really mad when they hear the idea that we're not alone in the universe, because then they say, well, where is God? And then where does God fit into this? It's hard for people to accept change, and it's hard for people to accept that they may have been lied to their whole life. How do you tell someone you've been lied to your whole life, that people have lived and died believing in something that wasn't true? And then some people don't want to know. I mean, I have people on Facebook that I will not introduce to my page because I cousins. I don't believe they can handle it. You know, I um, I don't think it's the majority, but yeah, I think that people get very comfortable in what they've been taught.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was one of those people where like I had so many friends saying, "Hey, have you looked into like all the moon stuff?" They always say the moon stuff, right? So, and I was like, I think I watched something one time on Gaia, and it was something about the moon not being what we thought it was. And I was like, I can't watch this. Like, I don't know. I just was not ready to accept it. And now as I go like throughout researching like the UFO phenomena and others and consciousness, I'm like, why I have to research it all because it always comes through. Do you know what I mean? It always comes by in one way or another, the moon topic. So it's I mean, what am I gonna do on full moons now? Like look at it and be like, poser, you know,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
not.
No, I understand. I understand.
But there is
Um,
other, I mean, that doesn't take away from, I mean, you just find something else, I guess, and
well,
that's a dangerous thing about belief, isn't it? You know,
yeah.
we get stuck to these beliefs, as you said, and then we find out that that belief has been wrong. So it's just part of growing as a civilization, I think, and as a human to learn the hard truths. And even reading a little bit of like something um, before I actually like looked into your book, I was like, I have these like lunar oracle cards, and I'm like, like they're on the shelf now. I mean, it didn't like crush me to the point of like I'm not in an ontological crisis or anything. I understand that. I mean, I've read enough weird stuff to and experienced enough weird stuff just to understand that things surprise you sometimes, but they're real. So Yeah, I'm like that with my page too, though. I was anyways, but I just switched my whole page over to this because, those people, that are not open-minded to what you're teaching and doing, it's one of those things where how long can we really hide in this day and age what we believe in, or what we study? You don't even have to believe in it. Just, like what are we studying? What we're studying is not normal to most people. And to me it is. And I've met so many amazing people because of it. But people, like you said, like it's hard for change, and I've been like baby dosing myself with the moon stuff. So, so I'm not like, oh my God, one day. Just don't
Yeah.
use it.
Yeah, I like Oracle cards too. I have a collection of them. They're more of a collection. I don't use them. Years ago, I was really into them, and then yeah, I'm with you. And I've got you
Well, the
know,
art on them is always so beautiful on
they're
Oracle
so
cards.
beautiful, so pretty. But that's another story, I guess. That's a whole show. You should do a show on that. What do you
Oh,
do now?
right.
About the Oracle cards.
Yeah, my
Yeah,
husband's always like, "Don't you already have a lot of these?" Because I mean, they'll show up at the door, like, I'll order them or I'll just get them. And he's like, "Don't you just have a bunch of these that you never
right,
use?" I'm like,
right.
"Well, like, I pick one, that calls to me and I use it, and then I see another one I want because of the
Well,
art."
yeah, Priscilla, just because, we're talking about the moon and, you're saying this about the moon doesn't mean none of the cards are
Right,
relevant. We probably have, light cards with light beams. I do believe there are
oh,
light
yeah,
beams,
for sure.
out there. And yeah,
There's
it's
we
another
don't know we
show.
don't know everything. I was, this reminds me of a situation. You mentioned you wrote a book on angels. When I first I've been back and forth with, like, the witchiness my whole life. I had a lot of anomalous experiences when I was younger, like, so it just made me more open to things. But
Hmm.
there was, like, always a point where I was like, "I just wanna be Christian." Like, they have it so they know what they want, they know what they believe in, they're not questioning, they're just like, "Yes, sir." Like, "This is my Bible, it's the truth." Like, I wanted some simplicity because when you start researching, especially at an early age, you kind of, like you don't have a lot in common with people anymore besides being human, which is a beautiful thing. And we share this world, we share this consciousness in some points, and it's one of those things where it makes you an outcast. So you kind of stop looking into stuff. But at one point, my transition back into like my biggest awakening, as they say, right? You have this big awakening, was through what I thought at the time was angelic intervention. So I found a figure that's now controversial, Doreen Virtue, and she was teaching all this beautiful stuff about angels. She had these beautiful angel oracle decks, all these great books on,
Hmm. I
cleansing and
know.
detoxing, crystals, everything. And then
Right.
what was it, a few years ago, she like renounced it all
Yeah.
and was like,
Yeah.
I realized I was, going against God's word. But she always was, big on giving it to the glory to God, I think. But she just, like, all of a sudden was like, "Nah, just kidding," like, but I
Yeah.
still have her decks because whether these things are traditionally, like, angels or we don't know what they're called, and that's what we're calling them, um, something interacted with me, and it had a certain frequency that felt good, or it maybe appeared to me, or maybe it was just like, "This is my energy," and my brain's like, "Okay, angel," like because we're kind of limited in our perception of these things because we may have never seen it before, so our brain's just like, "Okay, computing, it's an angel," like, or "It's a demon,"
Right.
or "It's this,"
Well, that's the word that we associate with light beings, benevolent
Yeah.
beings, helpers, guardians. They exist. They are there. I believe there are these beings that are taking on a form, to whatever we might expect. Perhaps I read somewhere that perhaps if you're Wiccan, and I know all witches are not Wiccan. By the way, I'm not saying you're Wiccan, but I'm using this as an example that maybe they would see a cat. I read that maybe they would see a black cat and not an angel with wings. That this being, benevolent being, when they come in to help, will take a form that you recognize. I don't think at this point, I wrote that book in 1998. All right. So I think I've grown, and I understand now that there are people who are not going to understand if they have a helper, always, that maybe they don't recognize. So maybe they will see an angel with wings. Or maybe they'll just see a regular person because they don't believe in angels.
Right.
This helper is going to take whatever form of your belief. And there have been people, who, like, I've heard stories of people stranded in snowstorms where a man with a tow truck showed up, helped them, and disappeared. They turned around, he was gone. Okay, that's a summary of a story. He didn't have wings. I don't know what the beliefs of these people were, but this was a benevolent being who showed up and disappeared. I've had it happen. So we use the term angel because that's what we best understand to describe them. I no longer like using the term because I do think people think religion.
They do, yeah.
So I would like to write a new book, and I'm trying to come up with a title that can be all encompassing. As far as Doreen Virtue goes, I actually have some of her cards, and I really loved her stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure what happened to her. I hate to think that it was all about money because, you know, I don't know if her card. Maybe they weren't. I heard they weren't doing as well anymore
Oh,
or something, and this was maybe a way of earning more. But I don't want to slander her because I really
right.
liked her. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure what happened, but that's.
Yeah.
I hate to think that might. I wish I hadn't said that, but I hate to think that might have been a incentive because I don't know
Right.
why she would have changed
Yeah.
like that.
We
Really,
we wouldn't know unless, we asked. But it definitely makes you wonder why so many people just kind of like change on a dime, it seems, and maybe it wasn't like that. Maybe that's all we saw. We saw that moment in time, right? Maybe it was leading up to, and we weren't there for the moments that had them transition into
I
something.
don't know. I
You know what I
saw
mean?
her
It's
in
just like
person. I
one
saw her.
minute I was like happy, like I was, and I knew it wasn't real. The church thing was not real to me, but I just wanted to go back to not knowing so much. And I was there when I met my husband, like he used to call me church girl, but I would still secretly have my tarot cards, my oracle cards, and my crystals, and but then it was like, what am I doing? Because I know, like, you can't come out of the rabbit hole once you're in. Once you see it, it's there. You know what I mean? Even if you try, like I tried, I wanted to fake it. I was like, I'm just gonna get some stupid husband that's Christian. Nothing against Christian guys. I didn't mean it like that. But I'm just saying, I'm just gonna get some guy that only wants to have a family. It's gonna be simple. I'm not gonna have to think about all this other stuff, And then then I met my husband and I was like, oh my goodness, like, like what was I thinking? Because I just really like wanted to be normal and have a normal life. I didn't want to have all these experiences and know all this stuff that weirds people out and scares them, you know.
Oh
But
my God, I can
finally,
so identify. I can identify. Yeah,
but then
yeah.
once you know, you know. Do you know what I mean? So
You
it's
can't
one of those things.
unlearn.
I think that's
Can't
part of
un-
like our soul growth, right?
right. And everyone has their own journey. And even with Doreen Virtue, maybe this is part of her journey. Maybe this is something she had to experience for whatever reason that we don't understand. You
Yeah.
know. But yeah, you can't unlearn something. Yeah, I've lost friends along the way that I find that I don't have a lot in common with the people that I did before. Um, once now that my kids are grown, I have two, and they're grown now. And sometimes when I'm with people, I find that we don't have a lot to talk about anymore since the kids are all grown up. That was our connection,
Right.
and I can't go to these places with some of them. These ideas are just really complex.
Right.
We've
They
talked
are.
about some basic moon stuff here. There's a lot more going on.
Yes. Yes. And it's the more you research, the more you wonder. Yeah, I've even done that with the UFO thing. I was like interested in like kind of like the possible technology and physics around it. And I keep getting drawn back into the consciousness side of it. And then I keep getting drawn into the middle of them because there's a bigger part of me that realizes all of this is connected, the human, or you mentioned human origins earlier, and we don't know. Watson Crick wrote about that, or Crick wrote about directed panspermia and how we were placed here. And that opens up a whole nother line of conversation. We could do another hour on that.
In my new book, I actually talk about that. I'm working on another project, and I
Yeah,
talk about that very thing.
that's
It's
awesome.
interesting stuff, huh?
Right. And it's like the more you cannot allow yourself to be placed in a box because it hinders you. You know what I mean? So I'm just I learn things that are disappointing, but at the same time, I saw it for a reason in my mind. Like I was meant to see that. Do you know what I mean? So what am I going to do with it? I don't know. Because in the beginning I was like, I want to be nuts and bolts UFO, but then I was like, yeah, but I'm a spiritual person. I've had these visitations from beings, so how you can't just like, pretend that didn't happen. It's not like you're in the mall,
Yeah,
you're like, oh, there goes the gray.
yeah,
I
yeah,
see you, because what happens when they pop up again? It's just like you're like, yeah, I pretended I didn't think that you were real,
yeah. No, we
and
can't
it's
live.
confusing.
We're living in a false reality when we just ignore what's going on. And don't we want to progress as a people, as a world? Don't we want to be the ones who gain knowledge and wisdom and grow? Don't we want to be out there in the universe traveling? Do we want to just be standing still? If there's anything to reincarnation, and I believe there is,
Mhm.
wouldn't it be cool to come back to a Star Trek future?
Right. Oh my gosh. I always tell people, like, I'm so mad. The thing I'm most disappointed about when it comes to humanity is the fact that I'm not working on a spaceship right now. I'm always like, I was supposed to be working on a spaceship. I don't know why I'm in this room. I should have been on a spaceship, Like, I just had these expectations when I was little to like that I was going to be not on the planet anymore, which is kind of a weird thing for a little girl to want, but once you
No,
see stuff, you're
it's not so weird as you think. So, there are people so we are not tied to our bodies, okay? We have what I refer to as the avatar that we live in to be able to live on Earth. When we are, are asleep, we commonly leave and return. Sometimes people think that they had a dream, but most often you are leaving this avatar and you're traveling your real self, and people call it a spirit, a soul, light body, whatever your word is for it. That's your true self, and you're not tied to. You can come and go. So some people are saying, and this gets really complex, but some people are saying that they leave and they go to the ship. They are from the ship. They may be a part of the Galactic Federation. They have the ability to leave and come back and enter the body. And so even if you aren't on the ship and you're from elsewhere, then you can come and go. So maybe you really are leaving and going to the ship and returning. And you just don't know. And I was just listening today to a woman named Mary Rodell. Do you know her? Um,
I haven't heard of her.
she's I've never heard her talk before, but she was talking. She's in the community. We're all connected on Facebook. A lot of us.
Oh,
Priscilla and I are connected on Facebook. But she's a Facebook friend, but I've never heard her speak. But she was saying, you're talking about how people, are leaving and going to the light ships and then and coming back, and how you can, be born in and you can walk in and be from another place but be here on earth. So I'm just telling
yeah.
you,
Spiritual
maybe
walk-ins, guys.
that
If you haven't heard of
ship.
spiritual walk-ins, my goodness.
Yeah,
I tried
yeah.
to I hit a point where I was so depressed, I tried to do that, and the beings showed me, like, it's better for you to stay because of your kids. Like, if you have a walk-in, it's not always it's not gonna be you anymore. What is your family gonna do? That was one of the messages, that I received because I wanted to leave so bad. But
Sorry.
but no, I'm coping with the world now. Just that I always joke that movie Soul from Disney or Pixar. There's a point where she's like, "Gross, I'm in a body." Like that's how I feel sometimes. But I'm here for a reason. So I'm trying to still, just take things as they come to me because we're not going to know the big picture right away.
No, and everything's temporary. As weird as some people may think this sounds, we are only here temporarily. All right. So basically, let's just say we have a journey that we're on. And just imagine you're here on Earth and you visit China, or maybe you go to Hawaii and in this journey, in this life. Well, that's the same thing for your original self that's inside of this avatar. You can leave. When we leave, we return home and we can go to somewhere else. It's a journey that's continuous. This is a place that we came. Either we're here on a mission to help, or we're here to experience and learn. But it's temporary. So if you can just look at life like, okay, everything's temporary. One day it'll change. It's not forever. When you're in the middle of a problem, though, I know it feels forever.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it's another whole topic we could go on as like
Yep.
galactic reincarnation.
Yes.
That's for another time. Is there anything we didn't talk about today? Because we went over a little bit and I'm fine with it. I just don't want to keep you too long. Is there anything you didn't get to talk about that you wanted to talk about tonight?
I wanted to talk, just hit on those main topics of the structures on the moon. I hope I said enough about it. The structures, that they're finding whole structures now. In the past, they found pyramids on the moon, and it looks like due to those pyramids and monuments and things and the columns, the old ones they found looked a lot like our architecture from ancient history. So there may be an Earth-Moon connection, which is where my galactic history comes in. The title of my new book is The Moon's Galactic History, a look at the Moon's extraterrestrial past and its connection to Earth. There is a possibility that whomever is on the Moon, when they came in, maybe they brought people into Earth, and or maybe they or us. Because just to give you some highlights from that book, there was a time in our history where there are writings that said we could travel. We had aerial technology. The ancients did. We lost it somewhere along the line. We started over, but at that time we could go to the moon and beyond. They may have gone to the moon and started a colony there. There is, there's an idea that Atlantis was connected to the moon, and they may have had a city there, and there may have been a war between the moon, Earth, and Mars, or between another foe that the moon, Earth, and Mars were working against. So there's a lot more information out there, people, and I put it in my new book. I just wanted to touch on that, and that's it.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. We made it this whole time without any trolls. Now we have a troll saying naughty, disgusting things, but they're blocked now. Sorry, guys, if you saw that. I don't have any moderators in the audience right now. So thank you for yes. So definitely pick up Constance's other books. You can go to Amazon and view her author page. I do have the link to this, and from there, if you click on her name, you can view all of the other books that she has, and it sounds like she's working on some amazing stuff for us to look at in the future. I'm going to request that you write an ET encyclopedia one day. That would be super cool.
Yeah.
Add it to your list. Okay. There's a few out there, but I feel like everybody's approach is different, and I haven't seen it in like an encyclopedia form before. So everybody that is listening now, what are you going to do next? Do you have anything coming up next that you like to tell people about?
Well, I don't have any shows coming up or conferences. I'm just working on some book projects. So yeah, I'm going to keep that under wraps right now.
Okay, so make sure you follow her that we can see as it comes out.
And you can look me up I have a Moon Mysteries page on Facebook. where I put up, all kinds of interesting and anomalous information about the moon. I have a Constance Victoria Briggs page, which I'm working on, getting stuff on there, cosmic information. And I'm trying to, I have a YouTube channel, but I'm just starting with that one. So,
Okay, cool.
okay.
Yeah. So I have her links in the description. If not, I will add them. Thank you so much for showing up, Brad, Laura, Bob. You're always amazing to have in the chat. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Oh, I saw Joss. He popped in and out because he lives like in Europe, so it's like super late for him there. Constance, hang out after I end the live so I can say bye to you backstage. If you are listening to this on audio only, thank you so much. Go check out my YouTube page if you're listening on Anomalous Podcast Network. Please like, subscribe, share, leave any feedback to me. And if you're an author and you would like to talk about your book on any strangeness, such as moon conspiracies, UFOs, occult, I just had Mitch Hurwitz on. That was amazing. I'm really open to talking about anything that you probably wouldn't talk about with your great aunt at Thanksgiving table. So, which is another conspiracy, Thanksgiving. Anyways, thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night, and I will see you next week with Britt Barbieri. We're going to talk about how to differentiate between satellites in the sky, or is this a UFO I'm looking at, or is it Starlink? We're going to talk about stuff like that because a lot of people are looking up more and more to see things. So it's good to have a good basis from somebody that studies it like Britt. So I will see you guys next week. Have a great weekend.